What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we are here with Jeremy of Earth Groans. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here, man.
Yo, thanks for having me. I'm honored and privileged to be a part of this.
Oh, dude, the honor is all mine. It's so awesome to have you here. Tongue Tied is the latest EP, which is absolutely kick ass. Did you just sort of like consider this a continuation or like the sequel to the Prettiest of Things? Or is this like a new beginning for Earth Groans in a way?
Um, I would say it's just a totally separate chapter. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to do something completely different. And really, the only two EPs that actually correlate with each other would be the Prettiest of Things and Ways. So those two tie in with each other as far as storyline and writing goes. But every other EP has been kind of like its own creation, I would say.
Yeah. From Renovate to onwards, you've brought a lot of, you've mainly been releasing EPs. Is there any chance
Yeah.
that maybe with these EPs, this is like serving up to what a full length Earthgrown album will sound like? Or is this, are you going to stick with this sort of formula in a way?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do going forward because so the EP that we just released, Tongue Tied, that completes our contract with Solid State, and so I don't know. I actually really have no idea what I want to do. When I started Earth Groans, that was kind of a thing of mine that I was like, I just want to be an EP band. I want to release like an EP pretty much like every year or as often as we possibly can. And so, yeah, now going forward, I mean, I don't know what will happen as far as like if we re-sign or if we sign with somebody else or what we go independent. I really don't know. But so that is still up in the air as far as what I'm going to do going forward. I do really like doing an EP a year because it feels like the music industry, you have to constantly be like in front of people. You have to constantly be relevant. Otherwise, people forget about you really fast. I also like the idea of being able to do an EP just for the sole factor of like instead of like doing like five good songs and five filler songs, I usually write 10 songs, pick the best five, and then those are the five that we put out. So I kind of like that. It's just like less to take on writing. Like, so if we were to do a full length, I'd probably write like 15 songs, pick the best 10, you know? So it's a little less to take on when you're just doing EPs. But going forward, I really don't know.
Well,
We'll see.
the press clearly loves it when we have to review tons of prog metal bands and doom metal bands with, full length albums with each song being 27 minutes. It's a breath of fresh air. We always look forward to being able to review an Earth Groans EP because, it's going to be quick and to the point, which is how I really describe a lot of your music. But are you ever worried that the music you leave out of the EP will be a B-side one day and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, that could be a thing. I mean, it is. I mean, one of our biggest songs was not even supposed to be on the EP. It was just from our second EP. It's called Heathen Heart. That song was like one of between two songs I didn't know if I was going to use it or not. And even keeping it on the EP, I was like, well, I don't know if it's really going to like take off or like be anything substantial, but it ended up like that's our most played song on Spotify. So sometimes you just never know. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. When I listen to these EP from Renovate to now, when you have Renovate, Rehab, Prettiest of Things, and Tongues, like I feel so much many different emotions behind it and many different vibes. Is every album more or less or EP is more or less a self-portrait of who you are at that particular time in a way? Or do you kind of use music as an escapism where you don't necessarily like to bring your own personal life into it and maybe express something different?
yeah, I would say each EP probably has a lot to do with like where I'm at currently in life, or maybe just even like a chapter of life, like from past life or something, or just like it's definitely not. Each EP is like some type of reflection of me and my creative. But yeah, I would say yes. Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't know how to say what else to say other than yes. I really believe that it is like definitely like it's definitely a part of who I am at that time, or pulling from a time in my past or something like that. So
as the vocalist, have you always preferred to have music before any lyrics came through fruition, or could a lyrical idea maybe help guide your hand with how the music will sound in a way?
I would say it goes both ways. I've done each way. With this record, the idea of tongue tied, that was in place before I wrote any of the music at all. I don't know how much some of it, I would say it guided, like the title track, tongue tied. I would say that the lyrical concept guided some of the writing and like musically and dynamics of the song. But I wouldn't say that's always the case in every song that I write. I would say it's probably 75-25, where 75% is I probably write the music first and then apply lyrics after.
You ever worry that you'll have the best lyrics ever and then they're always like one syllable over every arrangement that you have?
I mean, that's one of the hardest parts about being a lyricist or being a vocalist is, I mean, a poet, you can just write a really cool poem and that's it. There's no, I guess, like guidelines that you have to fall within or boundaries that keep you. But so a lot of times I write my music in a poetry form, and then when I bring it to the song, sometimes it's really complicated, especially with our music, because not all of our music is 4/4. Not all of our music is just like black and white as far as like here's the beat on 2 and 4, something like that. So a lot of the times, I end up having to completely rewrite the lyrics to make them fit into the song. And sometimes I have to sacrifice like some of the words I like or some of the meaning that I really want to push just to make it fit into the music. So that is definitely one of the struggles of being a lyricist.
Do you want your lyrics to be open to interpretation, or do you want the listener to be sort of like as engaged in the lyrical meaning as much as the music itself?
I would go both ways on that. Most of the time, I would say, it would be open for interpretation, but there are some songs where I want it to be like, this is what I mean when I'm singing about this song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you express your vocals and your lyrics through many different vocal styles as well, from very aggressive to, very clean and harmonizing. So does almost like having different usages of your voice express different emotions, or maybe you use those different usages of your voice to express different meanings?
Yes, in times. I would say not very commonly. For the most part, I don't care so much about that. When it comes to like writing and everything, I think it does a really good job. It could be really cool for storytelling, but I guess I don't do a ton of that in our music. There are certain parts, like for instance, on one of our records, Waste, there is one song where it is supposed to be like an outside voice speaking to the person within the song, where I do a completely different, like I do a low that I don't do very often. And so it does feel almost like a guest vocalist, but it's still me, but it is kind of like an outside voice speaking to the person the song's about. So I guess I can't say that I always do, that I do one way or the other all the time. It's just all about what's going to work best for the song and where I'm at in the moment in the writing process.
Yeah. And being that both was the answer for a lot of questions, is it fair to say that you get lyrical ideas from both internal and external sources?
Definitely. Yeah, I'll get inspiration from somebody I meet, from an encounter I have at like a grocery store. Like I'll take anything that I can. If it sparks some kind of creative inspiration within me, I will definitely use that.
But here's the debate now I like to have with artists. Do you believe inspiration is something that can actually be sought out? Do you really can look for it as if you're pulling a book off of a shelf? Or do you just kind of have to let the energy sort of like strike you when you least expect it and kind of let the inspiration come to you?
Yeah, once again, I'm going to go with both because there are times for instance, like with this record, Tongue Tied, like I wanted kind of that concept to be kind of an overall theme within the song. So there are some songs where I'm like, okay, I have to force myself to write something, or not necessarily force, but I need to push myself to write something that is going to tie into this meaning. And then a lot of times when I'm writing, it is just like oh, I feel really inspired, and I start jotting down notes and start like creating.
Do you need
So.
do you need to be in a specific place in order to cultivate ideas and kind of like put pen to paper in a way, or does the setting of where you are, the emotional state of mind, not really matter as much?
I wouldn't say that it matters a ton. I am a very, very ADHD person. So if I'm around people, it's really hard for me to focus and hone in on that creative side. There was a time where I went camping strictly for the whole purpose of writing a majority of like lyrical content for like our last record. And as I was out camping, I could not come up with anything. Like I would get up every morning at sunrise and I'd go out and sit on this giant rock that was over this river, and it was really beautiful. And the inspiration honestly should have just been running through me. But I'd go out there and I sat down and I would just sit there and I couldn't do anything. So
That
I don't know.
sucks.
So I would just say that it's kind of random for a large part of my writing, but there is I do my best thinking in the morning, or my mind is clearest in the morning. So when I go into writing mode, whether it be for the music side or for lyrical side, I'll wake up, get my coffee, I'll sit down, and I'll just kind of like meditate for a while, and then I'll try and see if anything comes out. And there are days when things come out, and there are days when things don't come out. And I just sit there and I'm like, well, it didn't work today. I'll try again tomorrow. So I'm not one of those, like, I definitely would never claim to be like a genius writer where I can just sit down and just write the most beautiful song. It's a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of work for me to really write well. And I care a lot about what I'm writing about. So I never want to just like rush into things or just like vomit some nonsense that no one's going to be able to take something away from.
Well, sometimes if that's a good point that you bring up. First off, I really hope that you still had a good time on that camping trip, because that's kind of heartbreaking to hear.
I really did. I did a lot of hiking and everything like that, and it was a good getaway for me. And it was an excuse to actually get away too, because sometimes I need like a reason to get out of my studio. But anyways,
Yeah.
it was a good time. Yeah.
But when your songs are as emotional as they are, like, and you work on them for a long period of time, and sometimes you're just working on the lyrics, or sometimes you're putting the musical composition together. Do you find that the longer you work on something, the harder it is to sort of maintain the emotion or the energy that initially sparked that idea? Do you prefer to sort of feel the same way when you finish a song as you do when you start it?
Yeah. Yes and no. For the most part, I would say yes. Some songs that do get drawn out. Or if like when I'm in the studio recording and I decide to rework something, it is hard sometimes to tie back into like that inspiration that I had at the time when I was writing.
Yeah. And do you almost kind of like need to sort of look for it again, or do you just wait for it to come back to you?
It is something that I almost have to just like mentally put myself back into that zone, I guess. So,
and when you are like in your studio and you're writing this material, and when you then play these songs live and you bring them into an audience, do you think that when people interpret these songs in their own way, that maybe that adds another layer of context and another layer of meaning to it as well?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I've had people come up to me and like basically say, "Hey, this song inspired me to do this," and I was like, "Well, that wasn't necessarily like what I had intended for the inspiration of that song, but as an artist, I encourage it and I think it's great."
Yeah. And is there at all maybe a similar energy that you channel into your live presence as you do in your songwriting, or are they two completely separate arts altogether?
I would say they're probably two separate arts. Yeah, for the most part, there are times when I will like kind of be on stage singing or doing my thing, and like I will get inspiration from that song. Like my mind will just jump into the inspiration that I got from that song, and I'll feel it a little bit more. But for the most part, I feel like when I'm in my studio writing, I'm a writer, and when I'm on stage performing, I'm a performer. So I wouldn't say that they necessarily really tie into each other quite as much.
Do you feel like, because this is another debate I like to have, because in the end, what you're doing is when you're playing live, you are just, in a way, replicating the songs in a live setting. So being that it's such a replicating element, is there anything remotely creative about playing live?
That is a very good question. I think just the way that you move your body around, and like it is like it's a very it is the way we move on stage, you know, headbanging and like kicking, whatever, throwing punches, all that stuff. It's like it is a form of a dance, if you will, but the way that we move. So yeah, I think that you can be creative with the way that you move your body and perform on stage.
Well, is that something you actually practice or master over time in a way? Like, do you almost have to rehearse the stage presence as much as like the actual songs?
Yeah, actually, honestly, yes. And so anytime we perform a new song, it's always a little weird because I'm like, I don't know how to move around to this song on stage yet. So as the tour, like this tour, we performed one of our new songs as part of our set. And so every night I was like, I would do a movement. I was like, oh, that fit really, really well there. I have to remember that for the next time. And then there's also times where I'm like, oh, that felt really awkward. I'm not going to do that again. So you do get into like this like robotic, like rehearsed stage where all the muscle memory just kind of takes over. Like, this is what I do here. This is where I kick here, you know, stuff like that. And I do think that that's important.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because when you play songs and you're you're bringing into the catalog, so you're playing stuff off of Renovate and Rehab, Prettiest of Things, and Tongue Tied. You know, you're going through multiple spaces and times. Does it almost feel like when you play like a song off of Renovate that you're bringing back the Jeremy who you were in 2017? And if you play the Prettiest of Things, it puts you back in the mindset of 2020, or being that the material is now older and it ages along with you, that maybe it has a new meaning to you, and that maybe you basically approach it from a present state of mind.
Yeah, I would say probably that one. The second one, the more present state of mind.
And like, but it doesn't at all feel like you're kind of going back in a time machine. I've always said that a song could be like the closest thing to a DeLorean.
Sure. I mean, there are times. Yeah, it will. I think performing it wise, I think it's probably more of a present state of mind. But if I hear like one of our songs, or I go back and like listen to like Renovate, that definitely does feel like, oh, this is like where our band was at this time. This is when we were playing in basements and garages, and we were walking around the mall and handing out business cards, you know. So there definitely is like memories and like I think about the state of the band at that time, definitely. So yeah, I would agree with that also.
Yeah. And I have two more questions for you. We'll get the difficult one out of the way. How do you know when you're finished with a song?
Yeah, that's I mean, there's a saying. I've said this forever, because I also, like, people ask me that, like, as an audio engineer or mixing engineer, like, how do you know when a song is done, like when it's mixed? And you know, you can tweak and tweak forever and ever, and it will never. There is a point where things start to become almost worse, because you're just like tweaking for the sake of tweaking. And it's not necessarily beneficial. But there's a quote, I don't remember who said it, but art is never completed, it's only abandoned.
I get that all the time.
So, yeah. So like, you have to get to a point, you know, where you listen back to the song and you're either satisfied, or like satisfied to the point where you can like move on to the next one, or you are really frustrated and you felt left incomplete and nothing's clicking for you, where you might need to go back and rework it. But that's also a reason why you work with a producer or somebody else that can kind of be that outside objective ear that can be like, yeah, it's done now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Producer always helps. I've always said they're the fifth Beatle, the sixth Beatle. If you're in Slipknot, the 10th Beatle. So like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love the way that we harmonized the abandoned quote. By the way, I think that was the closest I've ever gotten to doing like a duet with the singer I was interviewing. So
yeah, nice.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is you guys originated in South Dakota, right? You're a South Dakota band. I actually did interview one band from South Dakota, Blacklight District, back in the day, I believe. So like, I'm just wondering, is there like a specific scene in South Dakota that you guys have been affiliated with? Because if I show Earth Groans to people who've never heard you before, they will assume that you're either from Massachusetts or Orange County, California, or maybe Virginia or something like that. But when I say no, they're from South Dakota, they're like really shocked. But there's metal there too. But like, yeah. So like,
Yep.
how was the sort of scene where you guys cultivated from?
Yeah, so Sioux Falls, that's the city that we're closest to. It's a small, I mean, Sioux Falls is like 250,000 with Metro, maybe not even that big. It's not very big. And in the state of South Dakota alone, there's only like 800,000 people or something like that. So yeah, obviously it's definitely on the smaller side, but there is definitely like a hungry music scene here. And since like South Dakota gets skipped on a lot of like the major tours because it's not an A market, a lot of people are going to Minneapolis or Des Moines or whatever. But when we play shows, like people are stoked because there's a show happening, you know. So people are hungry for live music here, and so yeah, people come out and get stoked about live music. There's a pretty good hardcore metalcore scene here. There's also a really big death metal scene here and a slam metal scene. But I feel like our death metal scene is like still stuck in like the early 2000s, which is really weird to me. And that's fine. It's probably just because we're a little uncultured here that people don't get some of the new music quite as fast. But people seem to really like our music here, which is really great to have like a fan base to play for, like to play a home show and have like a good amount of people. Like we played the first show of this tour, we started in Sioux Falls, and it was we had really bad weather the week of, and there was a bunch of snow and everything, and traveling conditions were not great. But we still, I don't remember the head count right off the bat, but I was surprised. It was like 125 or 150 or something, which is really, that's just a great scene. That's a great show for Sioux Falls and for a metal show in general for a smaller band. But so yeah, there's a good hungry metalcore scene here. It's just a little bit on the smaller side of things, you know.
Well,
because it is a smaller city.
having a small scene has its own line of advantages. You know, here in New York City, where there's a huge scene, you're going to have a lot of competition. You're going to have a lot of people who are jaded. You're going to have a lot of people who are just like, I could see them next time. We get every single show here. And a lot of times, too, there's like 5 big tours coming here at once, and you only have to pick one.
Yeah.
But you could guarantee whether it will be like a stadium headlining band or a local show in South Dakota, you could bet it's going to be crowded every single time because people appreciate it more. So I think it has its own line of advantages as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like kind of like you said, it's people are a little less jaded and they're a little more grateful just for the fact that there's a show happening, you know, and that people are playing in that area. And there's other markets that we've experienced, you know, like there's like in Idaho Falls, Idaho. That's one of those markets where people go to Boise and then like Missoula or Denver or something like that. So it's this market that is hungry for music and they want shows there, but they always get skipped. So the fact that there's a show happening, like people come out and they're really grateful for the fact that you're willing to play their smaller market.
Definitely. I think it's awesome. And I think, you know, when that all happens, I think that's how a community builds in a way. I think every massive scene, like let's be real, every massive scene, whether it be New York or Los Angeles or whatever, they all started off as small scenes at one point. So you gotta start somewhere. But before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. Just with the release of the Tongue Tied EP, what else could we be expecting from Earth Groans, if you're allowed to say, of course?
Right now we're gearing up for another tour. We just got home from tour, but we are getting ready for another tour in May. It's not announced yet, but it will be a West Coast run. And that is the next thing in line. Other than that, I mean, we're going to be trying to play as many festivals and many shows as we can this year, you know, to hype up that new release. So.
Oh yeah. I hope you guys can come to New York one day.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Earth Groans, Tongue Tied, out now. Be sure to pick it up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Appreciate it. See ya.